Hello everyone. In this video I'm going to be talking about water transport through the root. Now this level of detail is typically required at A level and IB, so this is aimed really at Key Stage 5. Now when we think about water entering through the root, we think about it passing initially in the root hair cell. Now the root hair cells found on the outer surface of roots are designed to increase the root surface area. So water will move from where it's in a high concentration in the soil in to the root hair cell and through the root via a process called osmosis. Now typically, because there is a low water potential in the leaves, because water keeps getting evaporated from the leaves and there's lots of water in the soil, we set up this water gradient that allows water to continually move in down this water potential gradient from the roots up the plant to the leaves. But where this video picks up is essentially how it goes from the roots to the xylem. Now the xylem are, along with the phloem, known as veins, and they form what's called the vascular bundle. Phloem are tubes that carry sugars and food up and down the plant. Xylem are tubes that carry water up and down the plant. So water is going to come in through the root hair into the root, and it's going to reach this xylem vessel to then continue up the stem. And this is where this video is really going to look in more detail. So our end point, if I just go in, our end point really is right here in the xylem. Because once the water is in the xylem, it's then going to pass up the stem to the leaf. So what we have here on the slide is a picture of a root sector in cross-section, and we're going to talk about two methods of water transport. Now the first one is known as the Symplast Pathway, and we're going to contrast that with the Apoplast Pathway. Now in the Symplast Pathway, water goes through the cytoplasm. So I'm going to colour this in red. So what we have in the Symplast pathway is water, once it's in the root hair, actually passing a bit like this through those cortical parenchyma cells and into the xylem. So the Symplast pathway goes through the cytoplasm. What you might be able to see is that the cytoplasm of neighbouring cells actually connect through what's called Plasmodesmata. They're little small channels in the cell wall. So I'll just highlight one of those in particular. So here, for example, that little channel, that's called a Plasmodesmata. And it's as I've said, small channel in the cell walls of neighbouring cells. So what I've drawn in red here is known as, so we'll put a bit of a key at the top. So red is what's called the Symplast Pathway. But there is an alternative to that, and it's called the Apoplast Pathway, and we'll do this one in blue. So in blue, I'm going to show you the Apoplast pathway that water can take. Now the Apoplast pathway actually goes through the cell walls. So once it's through the root hair into the root, it actually works its way through the cell walls. So a little bit like this. Now, the cell walls are very absorbent and water can simply just diffuse through them, as well as passing through the spaces between them. So whereas the Symplast method goes through cytoplasm, the Apoplast method goes through cell walls. But what you find is that there's a sort of block, and it's this thing here, this Casparian strip. The water is blocked by a sort of waxy strip in the cell walls called this Casparian strip. Now, once it meets that Casparian strip, it has to, as a result, then go through the Symplast method. So once the water meets this sort of blockade, if you like, it then is forced to go down the Symplast pathway. And it's useful because it means that the water has to go through a cell membrane, and cell membranes are able to control whether or not substances in the water get through. So once it's past that barrier, water can then move into the cytoplasm. Just to be clear, it's not the endodermis, which is the region, this sort of section here. It's not the whole endodermis that is blocking the apoplast pathway. It's just purely the Casparian strip that is blocking it, this waxy layer within the cell walls. So they are the two routes that water can take through from a root hair cell into a xylem vessel. The Symplast method, through the cytoplasm of the cells and through channels called Plasmodesmata, or via the Apoplast pathway, where water goes through the cell walls up until it reaches the Casparian strip, and then will go through the cytoplasms like the Symplast pathway to get into the xylem. So in another video I'll be talking about water movement actually up a plant in terms of cohesion and tension and root pressure, and I'll also be looking at transpiration and the loss of water. But this video is just to outline the difference between the two pathways, the Symplast and Apoplast pathway of water movement. Okay, hope all that helps.